This is a Samsung CF390 and it is a 24-inch curved monitor that costs around $120. Hey guys, Rahul here and welcome back to my channel after a really long time. Now you see, at $120, not only that this is one of the cheapest monitors you can get, this is actually one of the cheapest curved monitors by a name brand that you can get, period. Now starting off with a little unboxing, you can see that this is a CF390 Essential Curved Monitor along with a few other information. Now opening it up, you can see on the left side that there is a menu control options, which is pretty good because literally no one checks the manual anymore. Now getting on to the actual unboxing itself, first thing to notice is the power cable and the VGA cable that comes with it. Unfortunately, there is no HDMI cable. Then you find the power adapter, some paperwork, more paperwork or stickers, the base of the monitor where you attach to the monitor itself, the neck of it that attaches the monitor to the base, and finally the monitor itself. And after a quick 3 to 5 minute assembly, this is what you end up with. And I'm not gonna lie, it looks pretty good and it will fit into pretty much anyone's setup. Now looking at the back of the monitor, you can see that it's made out of this rich plastic material, which makes this weird little sound when you try like scratch over it. And it's kind of satisfying. Looking at what you can find here, there are some holes for a VESA wall mount. Going down, you can see an HDMI port, VGA port, an audio jack, and finally a power supply port. On the left side of it, you can see the control button, which is a tiny little knob or a joystick that's really convenient and really functional to use. And it's also really satisfying with that clickety button thingy going on. And it is what's used to control everything monitor related. And finally, on the right side of it, you can see some power consumption information. And that is about it, what you get in the back of it. I think we should stress on the fact there's only one HDMI support and one VGA, which, I mean, at this price range, I cannot really complain about, but at the same time, it is a bit outdated. And just to have a clear reference of what I was dealing with, I looked into other monitors at the similar price range as well, and pretty much all of it had the exact same setup. There was one VGA and one HDMI. Be it the BenQ, whatever the name was, or any flat monitor or curved monitor at this price range have a very similar setup. So I don't think that I can particularly blame Samsung for it. It's probably a cost-cutting measure, and personally I'm okay with it, but I do feel like there are people that might have some problems with this. Now, moving over to the front of the display where you see the display itself. You see, it is a pretty good look with super short bezels, and it's a very safe design. Now, that is a good thing at this price range. You cannot go for something too drastic or polarizing at this price range because, you know, polarizing itself means like half the people might like it, other half might not. And this is kind of like a general design of what you can go with that kind of everybody likes. I mean, there's nothing to love about it, but at the same time, you cannot really hate about it. Now, before I move into the display quality, let's look at some of the options we get regarding the controls. When you click on the knob right behind the monitor, you are immediately presented with the menu. Source if you want to switch between VGA and HDMI, and then I'm saver mode, and also finally the power. Digging a little bit deeper into the menu, the first option you get is a picture. And it is where you control your brightness, contrast, color, and just several options like that. Now under color is also where you can also control your RGB tint. Now going back to the first option, you can set it to custom, standard, cinema, or dynamic contrast. Now I usually leave it on custom because, you know, I control what I see, or dynamic contrast, which is something I'll get into later in this video. Now you also have some controls for the on-screen display. It seems a bit useless, but it's there. Some settings where you can turn on eco-saving or timer and things like that, and finally some system information. Now looking at a quick spec of this display, it is a 1920 by 1080p display, and this is the definition of Full HD, and it is a 60Hz display at 4 millisecond response time, which is pretty decent for gaming. Well, at least for 1080p 60 fps gaming at least. Now talking about the display quality itself, watching YouTube videos and working or even gaming and things like that is pretty good in this display. It's pretty punchy with its color, it's saturated, it's a bit out there, and you know what, nothing to complain about, and it's pretty good. Now this wouldn't be an curved monitor review if I do not talk about this beautiful curve. Now it is an 1800R curve, which means the radius of curvature is at around 1.8 meters, and it is honestly pretty good. Now personally, it's just been a lot easier on my eyes, especially to my peripheral vision, where when you're working at things like CAD or Excel or things like that, the settings and the menu options are like all over your screen, and it's just much easier on my peripheral vision because it's curved. And it's personally something that I noticed. I've read some other reviews saying that the curve isn't good enough or it isn't like steep enough. I do not agree with that. I think it's perfectly fine for this screen size. Now you do have to sit close enough to notice it though, but once you do notice it, it's there, it's always there. And if you do sit far away from your monitor, you're definitely not gonna notice anything. Like, you wouldn't even notice there's a curve in this display. Now, the problems with this monitor stems from its greatest strengths. Now, we see having a curved VA panel is a breeding ground for light bleeding. It's not something you can particularly avoid, especially at this price range, and it is noticeable at very strong angles and also while trying to watch some dark content. Now, if you try to actually disconnect all your cables and just let it on, like the screen on empty in a very dark room, you can see how bad the light bleeding is. And trust me when I say it, it is bad. You see, even with this bad light bleeding issue, it shouldn't take you away from the fact that this is still a pretty good deal. You see, at this price point, you cannot expect much. And also, the light bleeding issues is only apparent when you're trying to watch dark content in a dark room, which should probably be like 2% of the time. Now, in terms of color reproduction and accuracy, it's kind of exactly how we expect at this price range. From what I could find, the RGBs and the sRGBs were at around mid 70%-ish, which is decent and more than enough for gaming, watching YouTube videos, Netflix, and even working. But if you are a professional level video editor or photographer who requires color science a lot, you probably would need a much more accurate display than this. Even so, I would highly recommend you try to install a different color profile if you do buy this monitor, just to ease out that few extra percentages of color accuracy. You see, here's the thing about contrast ratio, right? When you try to watch a dark image or a video at high brightness, it kind of falls apart. And that is where all this contrast needs to kick in to define between each layer of that color. But if you have a high, really bright backlight while trying to watch a darker picture or a video, this monitor falls apart. And that's when I turn on the Samsung dynamic contrast settings. You see, what it essentially does is decrease the brightness of the monitor to save its contrast. And it's a simple solution and it works literally every single time. But there are times when my eyes kind of needs adjusting, when it just goes like boom bright and then like dark out of like all of a sudden. So if you're watching something that's too dynamic between bright and dark, you might not want to turn that settings on. Now, one thing I didn't talk about yet and couldn't test out is the AMD FreeSync, which this monitor comes with. Now, you can only test this out in AMD systems, and unfortunately, I have an Intel NVIDIA thing going on here. So what AMD FreeSync does is essentially try to avoid screen tearing, especially if your frame rate of the game, whatever it is that you're playing, drops below the frame rate of the monitor. Screen tearing is an actual problem. So what it does is change the 60 Hz display of the monitor into a variable frame rate that matches with the one of your games so that it will avoid screen tearing and make a bit more smoother gameplay of an experience. Okay, finally, what is the conclusion here? So, this monitor is not made for the pro gamer who wants to game at 120 FPS with an RTX graphics card. No, this is not for that person at all. This is for the average consumer out there who just wants to watch Netflix or do some light work on it, and even some casual gaming at 1080p 60 fps. And for that, this monitor is perfectly fine. Now, this is also a pretty good monitor if you're like a gamer trying to enter the field and where every single penny counts. Now, for hardcore gamers, the 4 millisecond response time of this monitor is actually really good. Now, you see, I saw many other monitors with much worse response time than this display, so I think this is a pretty good deal. Now, if you do have a bit more budget in your portfolio, I do recommend going with something a little bit more expensive. That will be much better for you. At the end of the day, it's a Samsung monitor, which means that it kind of opens you up to all the service centers if you have any issues with your monitor, which you would not get with any other generic brands. Now, being back to the point of this being Samsung, this is probably the safest choice you can get, and it's made for the consumer that doesn't want to think about a lot of things. This is a safe choice, and that is what it's all about. Samsung made a safe monitor for people within a budget who wants just a safe product that will work and function even if it's not the best. And that's what it is, and that's it. That's literally this monitor. And I hope you like this video, everyone. And until next time, I'll see you. And before I go, make sure you do subscribe to this channel and like this video because it is super important for tech YouTubers especially at the infancy of the YouTube channel to get a lot of subscribers and to get monetized as soon as possible, because tech YouTube space is expensive. And trust me when I say this, I have put out videos before and I wanted to continue it, but I simply didn't have the budget to do it. And when I do, I make a video about it. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and like this video, give it a thumbs up. Until next time, see ya. Bye.